I never meant to hold a scalpel. I was just supposed to clean the floor. So how did I end up slicing open a man's chest while 3 licensed doctors watched me for instruction? Who the hell was I pretending to be? A savior, a monster, or just a janitor who knew too much? It started with one lie, one night, one dying man, and a decision that changed everything. Do you know what it feels like to fake your name on a hospital badge? To walk into an operating room knowing you're not supposed to be there? That your hands aren't certified, your knowledge isn't licensed, and if someone dies on that table, it's murder? And yet, I saved lives, more than most. But none of that mattered when it all came crashing down. You want to know when it all fell apart? It wasn't when the hospital board found out. It wasn't when the police came to my door. It was when I looked into the eyes of a boy on the table and realized he recognized me. From the shelter, from before the scrubs, before the mask, before the lie became a life, and his first word was doctor. 3 years earlier, I was mopping blood off the ER floor. Nobody noticed me. Nobody cared who I was. But I listened to every word, every diagnosis, every mistake, and when the night shift surgeon collapsed, when no one else was around, I stepped in. Because I knew what to do, and I did it. God help me, I actually did it. But this isn't a story about a hero. This is the story of a fraud. A man who hid in plain sight. A man who was praised, right up until the moment he couldn't hide anymore. Because secrets rot, and lies cut deeper than scalpels ever could. And when the final cut came, it wasn't in an OR, it was in me. If you think this is just a story about a fake doctor, you're wrong. It's about guilt, about survival, about the price you pay when saving lives means losing your soul. And the worst part? I'd do it all again. Because the last patient I ever touched was my brother. They say every surgeon remembers their first cut, the snap of the skin, the warmth of real human blood, the moment when your hands stop shaking or start trembling forever. Mine wasn't in an operating room. It was in a janitor's closet, with gloves 2 sizes too big and a scalpel I wasn't supposed to touch. That night, I was just supposed to mop the trauma bay. Floor 3, OR wing, midnight shift. Blood was already pooling under the gurney. The nurses were yelling. A pager was screaming from somewhere down the hall. But the surgeon was gone, collapsed in the stairwell. Massive stroke, and the patient, he was coding. Alone. I don't remember walking in, I remember acting. I grabbed the gloves, tore open the sterile kit like I'd seen them do 100 times. I didn't think. I moved. His name was Julian, 38, blunt abdominal trauma, BP crashing, gray skin, and bleeding out fast. I had to open him up. There was no time. I'd never done it before, but I'd seen enough. I knew where to cut, where not to cut. I whispered every step to myself, like a prayer I wasn't sure I believed in. Midline incision. Avoid the liver, clamp, suture, stay calm. The scalpel touched skin, and in that moment, I became someone else. There was no applause, no spotlight, just the sound of his heartbeat slowly returning, and the silence that followed when it stabilized. I backed away from the table, hands soaked, heart numb. I expected someone to scream, to drag me out by the throat, but instead, a nurse looked at me and nodded. Nice work, Doc. And that's how it began. One lie folded into a miracle. They thought I was a fill-in from the night shift rotation, and I didn't correct them. I couldn't. Because for the first time in my life, I felt seen, useful, real, and that lie. It felt better than the truth ever did. You see, I used to want to be a doctor. Really. But poverty doesn't care about dreams, and when my mother died in a waiting room, because we couldn't afford an ER visit, I stopped dreaming. I started surviving. I worked janitor jobs in clinics, listened through walls, read medical manuals in the dark. Everything I knew, I learned in silence. So when they gave me that first white coat, I didn't say a word, I just wore it, like armor, like sin. Each shift I studied. Each night I learned from real surgeons. And when emergencies came, I became the ghost they trusted, without even knowing who I was. But lies have a heartbeat too, and mine was getting louder. Because one day Julian, the man I saved, came back. "Doc, you saved my life. I owe you everything." I wanted to say, "I'm not a doctor, I just knew what to do," but I smiled and shook his hand. And that silence, it cut deeper than the first incision ever did. I started doing more, small procedures, stitching wounds, reading scans, and somehow no one questioned it. Hospitals are chaos. If you look confident and wear scrubs, people believe you belong. And I was good, damn good. Better than some who had diplomas on the wall, but none of that mattered. Not when the police got involved. It happened on a Tuesday. Security called me to the admin wing. There was a file on the desk. My file. Or rather, the file that shouldn't exist. "Your credentials didn't verify. Who are you?" I didn't answer. Because how do you explain saving lives you were never allowed to touch? The folder was unmarked. Just plain manila. No hospital logo, no name. But when the director slid it across the table, I knew, before I even opened it, I knew everything I had buried was inside. I opened it anyway, one page at a time. Page 1, a list of physicians. My name wasn't on it. Page 2, a license number. It didn't match mine because I didn't have one. Page 3, a surveillance photo. Me, in scrubs, holding a clipboard, smiling like I belonged. I wanted to throw up. Instead, I looked up, right into the eyes of the woman across from me, Dr. Hannah Mendez, Chief of Staff, and the only person I ever truly admired in that building. She didn't scream, she didn't even blink. She just asked me, "Who trained you?" I didn't know what to say. Medical books, late-night videos, memorized protocols, stolen time in empty ORs. How do you explain that? That your hands learned from watching, not studying? That your skill came from desperation, not residency? So I said nothing. My training? It was a basement apartment, a second-hand anatomy dummy, and a stack of borrowed nursing textbooks. I practiced sutures on raw chicken, intubated mannequins after hours. I sat outside classrooms I wasn't enrolled in, just to listen. No tuition, no mentors, no backup, just me, and the belief that if I learned enough, maybe I could keep someone else's mother from dying in a waiting room. But belief doesn't count in hospitals, only papers do. And I had none. Dr. Mendez stood up. She didn't yell, didn't call security. She just said, "You saved lives, that's not nothing. But it's not everything either." Then she walked out of the room and left me alone, with my own name burning in my ears like a siren. I didn't go home that night, I couldn't. Instead, I walked the halls. Every patient I had helped, every life I had touched, were they real victories or just well-executed lies? You'd think I would have run, that I would have packed a bag and disappeared. But I didn't, because something happened I didn't expect. The patient spoke up. A woman I stitched up during a blackout. She wrote a letter. The child I resuscitated after a seizure. His father begged the board to keep me. Even Julian, the man from that first night. He stood in front of the ethics committee and cried. "I don't care what paper he has or doesn't have," he said. "He's the reason I'm alive, and that means more than a framed diploma." It shouldn't have mattered. Legally, it didn't. But something shifted. The hospital froze my access. But they didn't call the cops. Yet. Instead, they gave me a choice. Turn myself in, or disappear quietly and never set foot in another hospital again. Do I confess and destroy everything I'd built, or vanish and leave behind the only world where I ever felt real? But here's what they didn't know. I had one more patient left, one more life I had to save. And this one was personal. She came in around 4 a.m., no ambulance, no ID, no pulse, just a small limp body wrapped in a pink hoodie, soaked in rain and blood that wasn't hers. And when I pulled back the fabric to see her face, I froze. I knew her. Not from the ER, not from any hospital, but from a shelter, 3 years ago, before I ever put on a white coat. Her name was Maya. She was maybe 10 back then. Bright eyes, cracked glasses, tough like glass in the wind. She used to braid her little sister's hair while I swept the hallway, called me Doc as a joke. But now, she was dying on my table, and no one could find her in the system. No birth record, no insurance, no legal guardian, no chart. To the hospital, she didn't exist, but I knew who she was, and I knew what I had to do. I broke every rule I'd ever bent before. I didn't ask for clearance, didn't call a superior, didn't wait for a code team. I cut, scalpel, suction, clamp. Her chest cavity was filled with fluid. Some of it blood, some of it worse. Her heart was barely twitching. I performed a pericardiocentesis on instinct. I'd only seen it done twice. On adults. Maya weighed maybe 80 pounds. But I had to try. Her lips were turning blue, her eyes flickering under her lids like a dream, slipping away. "You don't get to leave," I whispered. "Not you. Not after all this. You can't be the one I lose." And then she breathed. One shallow, scratchy inhale, and I almost collapsed onto the floor. But I didn't, because there was still one problem. Legally, I couldn't chart her care, couldn't admit her into post-op, couldn't notify anyone because, on paper, she wasn't there. But her sister was. Layla. The quiet one. The younger one. I hadn't seen her in years, but she was the only emergency contact I could remember. I ran through old shelter files, hacked into the internal hospital directory, and found something. Layla, 16 years old. Intake file from a foster placement 6 months ago. Admitted once for anxiety, under sedation. No visitors listed, except one. A family friend, no name, but the address matched the shelter. I took a risk, called the number listed, blocked line, no answer. So, I did the unthinkable. I left the OR and found her myself. She was living in a halfway house, 3 stories up, no elevator, no security. She opened the door with tired eyes and wet hair. And the moment she saw me, she dropped her coffee cup, didn't even flinch when it shattered. "Is it Maya?" she asked. Not, "What are you doing here?" Not, "How did you find me?" Just, "Is it Maya?" I told her the truth. That Maya was in critical care, that we didn't know if she'd survive the next 24 hours. And then I told her the other truth. That if she didn't come back with me, her sister would disappear into paperwork, into the cracks, into nothing. Layla sat beside Maya all night, whispered to her, touched her fingers, didn't cry once. But around 6 a.m. she turned to me and said she was running from someone. That's why she didn't want to be found. She trusted you more than anyone, even me. I wanted to tell her I didn't deserve that I wasn't even supposed to be here. But then Maya stirred, her eyes fluttered, just for a second, and her lips moved. One word. "Doctor." She saw me. She knew me, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the license, not the lies, not the risk, because she was alive and I brought her back. But the next day, security footage leaked, And this time, it didn't just go to the board, it went to the press. The first time I saw my face on the news, I was still wearing scrubs. Still had Maya's blood on my shoes. Unlicensed surgeon performs emergency procedure on undocumented minor. That was the headline. Not life saved, not child stabilized, just fraud, crime, liar, and maybe they weren't wrong. The footage came from a hallway cam. One frame showed me entering the trauma bay. The next showed me exiting, gloves off, head down. The story went viral overnight. Hospitals don't like ghosts. They like credentials, certainty, clean names, and cleaner lawsuits. And I was none of those things. By morning, there were reporters camped outside. Some called me a hero, most called me a fake. But the ones that hurt the most were the ones that said nothing about Maya. Not one word, just my lie, my face, my fall. I was escorted out of the building like a criminal. No handcuffs, yet. But every eye in the hallway burned like a brand. Nurses who used to nod looked away. Doctors who used to call me for consults tightened their lips. Even Dr. Mendez. She didn't speak, she just placed a sealed envelope in my hand. Termination. Disciplinary review. Pending legal action. 3 pages. No signature, just policy. And just like that, I was nobody again. I sat in my apartment that night, didn't turn the lights on, didn't move. I just stared at the blood under my fingernails and wondered how it came to this. 3 years of silence, 3 years of pretending. For what? To be erased in 30 seconds of breaking news. But then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. Voicemail. I almost deleted it. Until I heard her voice. Layla. She's awake. She asked for you. I ran. Didn't think. Didn't pack. Just grabbed my coat and ran. Back through alleyways, across back entrances, through the old ambulance dock that no one guards after midnight. The hospital looked different at night. Like it knew I didn't belong anymore. But Maya didn't care. When I walked in, she smiled, weak, pale, but real, and whispered, "You came back, Doc." I shouldn't have. But I did, because this was the moment I had feared most. Not the exposure, not the arrest, but this. The moment where she still believed in me, even when the world had every reason not to. "You're not supposed to be here," Layla said. "I know," I replied, "but I had to say goodbye." "Why?" "Because they won't let me be a doctor anymore. You never needed permission." Her words cracked something in me. Something I'd kept buried beneath the white coats, beneath the fake badges. Maybe I was never supposed to be a surgeon, but I was never supposed to be invisible either, and maybe that's what this was always about. Not ego, not power, worth. I left through the same door I came in, didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. Outside, it had started to rain, the kind of cold drizzle that gets into your bones and doesn't leave. And in the reflection of the glass lobby, I saw myself. Not the fake doctor, not the janitor, just me. And for the first time in years, I didn't look away, but the story wasn't over, because later that night I got a call, not from Layla, not from Maya, but from someone I hadn't heard from in a very long time. My brother. The call came at 2:12 a.m., no name, just a number I hadn't seen in 9 years. I almost let it ring out. But something in me, some buried instinct, made me answer. And when I heard his voice, I forgot how to breathe. Daniel, my brother. Older by 4 years, wrecked by 30 more. The last time we spoke, he told me I was wasting my life trying to become someone I'd never be. "You can't save anyone," he said. "You couldn't even save Mom." And then he disappeared. Now he was on the line. And he didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. Like the final thread holding him up had snapped. Hey, it's me. I don't have long. He told me he'd been living off the grid, construction jobs, shelters, motel rooms, but now he was sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he'd checked himself into a small clinic upstate. Alone, no ID, no insurance, just a fake name and a few days left to breathe. I don't want to die as nobody, he said. I need my brother. I drove through the night, no map, no hospital badge, no plan, just me, and the ghost of everything we never said. I thought of Maya, of Layla, of all the lives I had touched and not touched, and I wondered, why is it that we can save strangers, but not the people we love? The clinic was quiet. No nurses at the desk, just the hum of machines and the low wheeze of a failing HVAC. Room 12. I opened the door, and there he was, thinner than I remembered, older than he should have been. You actually came, he whispered. I didn't know what to say, so I pulled a chair beside him, sat in the silence we'd earned, let the seconds pass like stitches, and then he said it, words that landed sharper than any scalpel. You wanted to be a doctor to save people, but I think you wanted to save me. And I didn't let you. He was right. I'd tried. Rehab visits, court dates, sleepless nights at county hospitals. But Daniel didn't want to be saved. And when he left, I thought, maybe if I learned enough, became good enough, I could fix someone else's brother. He reached out, thin fingers, dry skin, and I took his hand. Do you forgive me? He asked. I squeezed his hand, not too hard, just enough to say, yes. He passed at dawn, no codes, no alarms, just a final exhale and stillness. I didn't cry, not then. I just sat there, holding the hand of the one person I never saved. On the way out, I saw my reflection again, same man, but different. Because this time, there were no lies left to hold, no masks, no scrubs, no fake credentials, just me. And the truth. I was never licensed, never certified, but I was a surgeon of blood, of guilt, of fractured lives stitched back together, one at a time. And now, I had to find a new way to heal, one that didn't require a badge, just a voice, a story, a memory. I saved lives, but I couldn't save him. And maybe that's the price we pay, for trying to be more than the world ever allowed us to be. But even ghosts leave behind a pulse. If this story left you breathless, maybe it's time to ask, who gets to heal, and who decides who's allowed to try?